This video I'm going to review Chapter 4 from the Dynamic Slav course, looking at the Dutch and Catalan attempts for white. This is a very long chapter, so I don't think I'll go through the whole thing, but I want to show you guys some of these lines because I think they're a lot of fun. Alright, so we got d4 by white. We're always going to play d5. And after knight f3, e6, and this is ready for white to play the London. So if they play bishop f4, this is flexible to get into our London setup. And after g3, we're going to play f5 and go right into the stone wall. And in this case, since white has the bishop on c1 that points at h6, we're going to bring the knight to f6, but in some lines we will recommend knight to h6. It's kind of a tricky move order. After white castles, we have bishop to d6, getting ready to castle ourselves. c4, c6, this builds the stone wall setup. Bring the other knight into the game, very natural. And this line, 8g5, will take players of the Chessable Keep It Simple 1d4 out of their repertoire. So it's kind of a new move. It'll surprise your opponents, and it's a scary move to face from the white side. And now after knight d3, we're going with h5 right away. We have a very dynamic position, winning chances for sure. Queen c2, h4, here comes our attack. And after b4, we have queen to e7, and the queen is actually heading over to h7. That's going to be the idea to pressure the h-file. Okay, so rook b1, and now we play a6, getting ready for that push. And now queen to h7, h takes g, and checkmate threats are in the air. Knight to e4, we're threatening g4, knight takes g3, bishop takes g3, and the whole position falls apart. Very nice move, knight e4. And after b5, we capture the pawn, and now play g4, kicking the knight, which is going to open up this attack on h2. Knight h4, knight takes g3, bishop takes g3. And now is the tough part, trying to remember that whole sequence. So we're starting d5, playing e6 in case they play London. Now we play f5, no knight h6 with the bishop, knight f6. I like to think of a sentence to kind of help remember each move. So when you see c4, you play c6, get that stone wall set up. Knight d2, knight d7. Now here, when you see the knight go back to e1, that opens up g5. And now we go h5 right away. And at this point, we want to get the queen ready to go over, I believe. Queen to e7. Is that the right move order? Queen to e7? I believe so. Oh, h4. Okay, I was wondering if it was h4 or queen d7. b4, now queen e7. Rook to b1. And here I'm trying to remember, do we play a6 or queen h7? I believe it's a6 first. Because when b5 plays, we actually want to take with the a-pawn, opening up our rook. Now the knight comes out. We're going to take on g3 and play knight to e4 next, hitting that g-pawn twice. Whenever b5 is played, we take with the a-pawn. Now we go g4 and get our sacrifice on g3. All right, let's go through it one more time. And hopefully this time I can remember all the moves. Knight f6, bishop d6, c6, knight d7, g5, h5, h4. Got it this time. Queen e7, a6, queen h7. Oh yeah, we gotta take. Knight e4, take, kick, take, take. That's probably the longest line in the whole course. Now it's reminding me what to do, or re-quizzing me on this one. It's probably the longest line in the whole course, but it shows what can happen with the attack, which is why I went so deep into this line. You know, if we were to just stop it here, it doesn't quite show how the attack unfolds with that knight e4 idea, queen h7, and the sacrifice on g3. That's why I went a little bit deeper in this line. All right, let's go to the next one. So here we have knight to c3, the most popular move at club level. In this case, we aren't going for the wild g5, h5 attack. We're going to castle here, and we're going to look to improve our c8 bishop next. I was just reading the text. So let's castle. Knight to d7, and our bishop will come out through the queen side. b6. Bishop to a6, pressuring the pawn on c4. Now we take with the e pawn. So we get this imbalance, e2 versus c6. And look at this, the knight sits very nicely on e4. And the plan here is queen e7, rook a c8, knight to f6, defending this knight. And we have a slight advantage already. This is good. So we're playing the Dutch, which in general, Stockfish is not a huge fan of the Dutch. But we have a slight advantage, which means white probably made some slight inaccuracies along the way. All right, let's see if I can remember these moves now. Castle, knight d7, pawn to b6, bishop to a6, e takes, knight e4. Castle, knight d7, b6, bishop a6, hitting the pawn, e takes, creating this nice outpost, knight e4. And now let's look at line number 3. This is where white goes for a Catalan. So we're going to start out with the Slav, and then e6, going for our triangle. And this can transpose into a bunch of different chapters, but after g3, now we're in the Catalan attempt chapter. And we're going to play d takes c4, grabbing this extra pawn and trying to hold on. So g3, d takes c. And after bishop to g2, we're playing b5, playing with a dynamic pawn structure, holding on to this pawn, and making white play aggressively to try to prove any counterplay. So after knight e5, we're going to play bishop to b7, giving white this pawn back if they want it, but trying to get active with our pieces and gain the initiative. a4, a6, keeping this defended. And after a takes b, we can't take with the c pawn because our bishop is attacked, so we take with the a pawn. If white trades rooks, we can simply take back. And now knight f6. The quick attack has been neutralized, and we almost, let's see. Yeah, white almost has compensation for the pawn, but knight f6 sets a really cool trap, and a lot of club level players have fallen for this. So let's see what happens. Knight takes b5, c takes b. Looks like we're losing the bishop in the corner, but then queen to a5 check, and here we're completely winning. So this is one of the traps that you may see your opponent fall into, and we show the common traps in our course. So we have e6, d takes c, b5, bishop to b7, and then guard that with a6. We take the rook back, knight f6, setting the trap, take the knight, queen check. Go through it one more time. Defend the pawn, bishop to b7, guarding this twice, a6. Those moves are both forced. Set the trap, and queen a5 check. And at the end we show the plan. We want bishop to e7, castle, knight d7, queen c7 after we take the bishop. But those are all the squares we want to be on, and we have already a big advantage here. Completely winning, I put in the notes. All right, let's do one more line. So now white's castling here instead of knight e5, and we're going bishop to b7 still. meeting that g2 bishop on the long diagonal. After knight e5, knight to f6. And that's because we can't play knight d7 there, the c6 pawn would drop. So that's why we go knight f6, a6, and here we are still holding everything. So now if b3 is played, we're going to take on b3. And after the queen takes, we're taking d4. And we're playing adventurous here. White does have a lot of compensation, probably full comp for the 2 pawns. You could also play queen to b4 there, trying to harass white's queen, offer the queen trade. But my main recommendation is queen back to b6. And we're playing for the win here, being up 2 pawns. We're going to try to get castled, and it's up to white to prove that they have compensation. Top move in the database here is a5, which is a blunder, and white loses their pressure on the queen side once we drop the queen back to c7. And now we can start to trade. Bishop to f6, getting on this long diagonal, so both of our bishops are on the long diagonals at that point. Alright, so bishop to b7, knight f6, a6, take on b3. What was the move here? Queen takes d4, grabbing that pawn. Bishop b2 defends the knight, so we come back to b6. Knight c3, we're going to try to get castled and tuck our queen back and trade knights. So bishop to b7, knight f6, a6. So if you can kind of think of those sentences with each move, the reason why it's played, that'll help you during the games to make sure that you find the same moves. Because one thing I find is if I'm talking through the moves out loud, sometimes I don't pay attention to the move being played on the Chessable board. But if you're just thinking in terms of the text that you've already read in the previous times you've gone over it, or maybe you make your own sentence attached to a move, it becomes pretty easy to just keep repeating the same lines and getting them down cold. So now we're going to try to get castled. Queen c7, trade when offered, and put the bishop on f6. And here we want to play knight d7, castle, and pawn to c5. That's the plan. 2.5 point advantage. So this comes from our Dynamic Slav course, and there's a link in the description. And with the coupon code YouTube10, you can save 10% off. That's YouTube spelled out and then the number 10, 10. 10% off the Dynamic Slav course. All right, hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.